Thank you for coming back and joining us on My Morning Coffee. As you can see, we have an awesome guest with us. His name is Ty. I'm going to let him introduce himself and let everybody out there know who he is and what he does and why he's here.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ty Brownlow. I am a host of my own talk show and podcast called Word with Ty Brownlow. And basically, I take the motto, no one is worthless, no story is worthless, and I bring it to life. So that's pretty much what the show is in a nutshell, but to dig a little bit deeper.
Is your voice always like this on the talk show?
Yes.
Well, before you dig deeper, another reason why you're on here, Ty, because Ty is our fraternity brother.
Oh yes, I am also
a Phi Beta Sigma.
Fraternity
And before I say anything, shout out to EX Epsilon Chi Illinois State, LE, which is the Zeta Phi Beta sorority, chapter on campus. So I will be wrong if I didn't shout y'all out, because I know y'all gonna be like, man, how come you ain't shout us out?
So that's Chicago.
That's Chicago.
Yes. Well, it's Bloomington Normal, Illinois. I call it something else, but yes,
Okay.
that's on the campus of Illinois State University.
Are you from Chicago?
I am born and raised in Chicago.
In Chicago?
Yes.
Okay. How'd you get here?
How did I get to LA? I got to LA through my beautiful wife. And shout out to my beautiful wife, Chandria Brownlow.
Give her a plug too.
The Chandria Show in 105 cities. Check it out. Doing big things over here, Team Brownlow.
Absolutely.
That's right, all day.
All day. Man, stop playing.
Teamwork make the dream work.
All the
Were we
time.
just talking about that?
And basically, if it wasn't for her, I would not be here. And we got married. It'll be 2 years in June.
Congrats.
And there wasn't any type of convincing, do you want to come to Chicago or do you want to come to LA? I was coming to LA. There wasn't, I don't even think we had that conversation. That wasn't even part of the conversation. It was just already written. Oh,
This is what we're doing.
Right.
I'll be there. So
Right.
you don't have to worry about this because I'm not shoveling snow or 29-degree weather.
Or
and that's the
wind chill.
high.
Or the wind chill.
Right, when the wind chill is like -30.
So your wife brought you to our beautiful city.
Yes,
Right,
it's because of her.
Is she also from Chicago?
She is also from Chicago, but she's been here 6 years. So she's been loving, she's been cooling in Cali for 6 years. So
But I like
I'm
he already in
Cooling in Cali.
Cooling in
Cali.
Cali. That's what I'm talking about. Yeah, see, he already about it.
yeah, man. I love culture.
Right.
So she already has the lay of the land in LA for the most part, and even being here that long, I'm sure there's still some things she's learning. What has caught you off guard about Los Angeles?
Seriously, what has caught me off guard about LA has been the homelessness. Man, I'm just gonna keep it real. I know it's an issue and I know things happen, but to see it in such magnitude, it's a little you're like, whoa,
Do you think it's that way because coming from Chicago, most people that are not from here, they think they have a perception of LA, Hollywood, everything's bright lights, everything is this bomb diggity, and then you get here and you realize, wow, it's some of the same things that's happening in my community is here. Is that kind of why you feel that way? Is your perception was a little bit different?
So, to your point, I did a segment on my show called Hollywood Hustle, Myth versus Reality. And I interviewed people who were not from here, but transplants like myself, and I took what they thought LA would be in their head versus what it was when they got here.
Okay.
And just from my own aspect, in my mind, man, look, I'm hip-hop all day, 90s hip-hop, 80s hip-hop, I remember when hip-hop, some of the first artists I ever heard come from the West Coast, it was called rap. It wasn't even called hip-hop,
Right,
it was rap.
right. Let's keep it real.
So,
rap.
let's just keep it real. You're from the Bay Area.
Yes.
I could,
Go
and
on
Bates,
forever.
too short, all that, all
Yeah.
day, I can, come on, man, stop playing. But, so in my mind, I'm like, well, yeah, they're out there, man, getting this money, videos all day, it's a party,
Right.
ain't nothing but the
Yeah,
G thing,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
this, it's that, I'm like,
Low riders, yeah, everybody got the nice cars.
it's a party every day. I'm like, man, I have none of that going outside. It's like robbery going on. It's crime. You know, it's just like crime.
Yeah.
But I get here and it's no different. You know, to speed up things a little bit, I work in education. I've been in education over 15 years. And some of the stuff I've seen in Chicago, I'm like, man, I don't think anybody's
Right.
experiencing this.
I can't
Like
wait to
in
get
any
to
other-
LA to
Yeah.
get a break from.
You know,
Yeah.
because in my head, oh, okay, well, there's a lot of universities, man, you know, there's a lot of like astute people, like, man, you know, like, oh,
On it.
they're smart, they're this,
Yeah.
they're that,
They're
you know,
beautiful, they're
because
gorgeous.
it's the perception
The
that
perception.
Yes.
The Beverly Hills, yeah,
Everybody's
Hollywood,
skinny.
yeah.
That's just what
with
it-
skin,
everyone's a
and-
vegan, they
No,
work
no,
out,
no,
you
beach blanket
know,
going in,
I mean,
yeah, yeah.
it's Baywatch, you know what I'm saying? It's, you know, slow motion, you know what I'm saying? I'm like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
I want some of that Baywatch.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, there ain't no Baywatch going on out here. But you get here and you're like, okay, like, it's funny.
Roll
She
cameras.
knows where I work at the school. You know, the school that I work at, the kids that I talk to are in the same positions that some of the kids that I left in Chicago,
Mm-hmm.
if not worse.
And what is your role there?
And a teacher.
Okay.
Basically, I teach English, English, social studies, some of everything.
Uh-huh.
But I mean, it's more than just being a teacher. You know,
Yeah.
you have to be a counselor.
A parent.
I have to be a parent. I'm a parent of a 17-year-old in
And sometimes
Chicago.
you parenting parents.
Right.
All many times.
Many times. So to that point, you know, to that aspect, like a lot of these, especially young men that I have to like counsel, I think about my son.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, my son is 3,000 miles away. So I have to like take that into consideration. I have to make sure that he's okay because I know some of the things that he has to go through, even though it's not the same things that the kids here have to go through. It's still some of the same internal struggle.
Absolutely.
Let me go back to your hip hop. You were talking about hip hop and
Mhm.
bright lights and Baywatch. Does it add a level of connection with you though when you realize that some of the things that these glamorous California rappers are rapping about is actually more or as real as their lyrics? Because I think a lot of people think, oh, they just rapping that game,
They're just making that
but
up,
they
yeah.
ain't really living that life. And you come out here and you realize
That life is still real, just with a little
that
bit of
life is
sunshine.
still real.
And okay, so I say this all the time to all my friends who come out here and I meet up with them and I talk to them.
They don't stay, do they?
No, they
Okay,
no,
they go
no.
back to
They go
wherever
back
they
to
are
wherever they
from.
go.
Because we don't need any. I mean, you slipped right in,
Yeah,
but
hey,
the way
you know.
traffic is set up and the way cost of living is set up,
I won't even talk about traffic.
we
on
don't really
Normandy
need.
going towards Hollywood.
Just
That's
saying.
just insane. Like no one has to live that life. Why do people live that life? I don't
Right.
You know, I was gonna tell you guys, there's studios in, the South Bay and, Culver City and other Torrent. No, we got
They're not
Hollywood.
urban friendly.
Urban friendly.
They're
Urban
not
friendly.
urban friendly. For those people who know
They're
what I
just-
mean,
they're just
they're not
getting there.
urban friendly. Yeah.
We have Tanya on the front lines making
Yes.
them
Yeah,
more
we're
urban
working
friendly.
on one city
Right.
at least.
I can. I mean,
Now,
I
I'm
can.
not gonna lie. I've been out to your neck of the woods, and that beach out there.
Baywatch. No, we got homeless too.
Yeah.
Bad.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
okay, but you
On
know
the
what?
beach.
They're not on that side of the beach.
Right,
Where
yeah.
I was, it was.
Yeah.
Like, hey, there's a mountain.
Yeah.
Let me get my mental right.
Exactly, because it's funny you say that because whenever she's posting pictures of her working out, it's always a nice backdrop. I'm like,
Oh, really?
I'm like, where is that at?
I know
like,
what
where's
side of the
Tanya?
beach you're on.
Right,
We're on
exactly,
this
yeah,
particular side of the
yeah,
beach
They're
where.
calling you out right
Hey,
now.
look, trust me, I've been there.
Yeah,
Yes,
so I think she
I
might
know.
be part of Baywatch. I'm just saying.
So I'm gonna go ahead and go live next time from one of those homeless coalition meetings
Right.
that we have that make people lose their minds absolutely in the South Bay.
But
Yeah,
as
no.
you can see, you're right. Homelessness is major here
That's
in
one of the
Los
biggest
Angeles.
things
Yeah.
that
What
jumped
else?
out at me.
What else surprised you about LA?
Really, this goes into what I do as well, part of my show. Like the youth that I work with, just their mentality.
And I also, because I have some familiarity with where you work, it's fascinating to me when I used to do work there as well. the amount of young men of color that are there
Mm-hmm.
that don't necessarily have, let's say, like developmental delays or something that would traditionally be a part of that school,
Mm-hmm.
but because they may have had a behavioral problem or because they didn't listen to the teacher,
Mm-hmm.
they are being funneled into these secondary schools
Yes.
and treated as though they are, they have learning disabilities and they don't. It's
No,
that
it's
their
just a
behavior,
behavior issue.
and it's not necessarily even their behavior has been bad. It's that the teacher or the administration doesn't have the patience or the tolerance
Or the tools.
for their black skin, and so they shuffle them
urban.
they
So
shuffle them
politically astute.
into these schools that are that should be housing people and children that really have developmental delays, and
Yeah.
they just get shuffled in to this fold unnecessarily.
Well, to just break it down for all my people, I'm just gonna break it down what she said. Basically, man, they're hiding behind these forms and they're just labeling these kids as this. They're getting these kids in here for this money. They're not really helping them because there's no policy to help them. And since there's no policy to help them, then it's like the Wild West. I can do whatever I want. I can teach however I want. If this person doesn't develop to the way that they need to develop, oh well, we are still going to send them through, and then in the end, send them out into society, and it's a free for all if they make it that far.
Right, and then that's when I get them. When they come
And
Right.
that's when you
society.
get.
Right.
So,
No,
okay,
absolutely.
Yeah.
can I just say this? I do watch the show, all right? So I know what
Oh,
it is that
thank
you
you.
do. I know what it is that you do. Superwoman over here. So yeah, to sit up here to talk to you all, like I have a familiar instinct on what it is that goes on in the show. So that's why I feel like me talking about this isn't
Yeah.
so
Perfect.
It's not
Crazy
taboo
or whatever,
or
right.
outlandish.
So-
And we need to have this conversation more,
Mhm.
and we need to advocate for programs to help, because it starts when we're young. And then it manifests as we get older if we don't do anything about it. So we do need to have more discussions about behavioral issues and mental health, because some of it does stem from mental illness.
Mhm.
But a lot of it is behavioral too, and they sometimes they
They lump it all
together.
Mm-hmm.
So when just what she said
Mm-hmm.
and how we need to be a part of the change.
Mhm.
When you spoke on policy,
Mm-hmm.
what can teachers do, or what can you do, or what can community members like us do to help enact change or help enact policy change that will fix some of this funneling our kids into
The school to prison pipeline.
Yes.
That's happening.
So talk to me about policy, or what you know about it, and how the people in your community could actually be a participant in that.
Well, if we're going to keep it real about policy,
Yep.
let's just keep it really real about
100.
policy. Most schools don't want to implement policy because they're afraid of the money that will stop coming in.
Mm-hmm.
Period. You know that to be true.
Absolutely.
So their policy may be weak. Their policy may be more hindering towards the staff than it is the actual student. So that's why you see these articles all the time about, well, man, we need more black men in education. Well, you'll get black men in education, but you won't
Well,
keep
keep
them
'em.
because you have these incidents. Oh, well, he looked at me funny, or he told me to go the other way, or
He was bullying
whatever.
me.
He was bullying me. There's a situation going on in Chicago right
Exactly.
now. I can tell you at Curie High School, and for those people that are watching this, that's from Chicago. Y'all know what I'm saying. Mr. Oliver, he was a security guard. He became the basketball coach. Took Curie from a low-end school to a basketball powerhouse. All right, so he's well respected. He's a alumni of the school. All right, so this isn't just.
So he's coming back to where he
knows the school.
He knows the
he's
school,
born
he
and
knows
bred
the area.
and
Right. Yeah.
So that was an incident, a alleged incident where a kid made up something that Mr. Oliver interacted with him in a wrong way, and basically now Mr. Oliver is out of this position, or he's fighting for his job. Now that puts the spiral effect into everything else, because you have to think about the kids that he's coaching.
Uh-huh.
Right. Now, those kids have scholarships.
Yep.
What about the seniors? You know, like they're trying to get to the next level. You're a mom. You have kids that play baseball, right?
Yep.
You're trying to get them to the next
To
level.
the next level.
Man, so think
This
about
one
This
removal,
one kid.
this
right.
one kid that's trying
That's
to get to
placed
the next level.
everybody's future in
It does,
jeopardy
yeah.
So,
because of lack of decent policies.
decent policy and lack of supervision,
Yes.
period.
And
You
lack
work in
of,
law
wait a minute,
enforcement.
and lack of keeping stuff real. See, the
And
problem is people don't
They
want
don't want to keep
they
it.
don't want to keep it real. They don't, sometimes their kids is bad, okay, and we know they bad, but they want to act like their kids is good. So don't let me get started on that because,
Look,
you know, it,
for all my educators
I
out
say
here.
get started on it, Gia.
No, seriously.
Now, get started.
For all my educators out here, y'all know this to be true. Bad kids don't miss school.
Ooh.
right.
They don't.
They don't.
They at school every day.
What else are they going to do?
Ooh.
You never
What
heard
else
of
do they
that?
do?
They're
Right.
there.
Bad
Every
kids
day.
don't miss school.
Right.
So they getting awards for perfect
Yeah,
attendance?
no, those ones that
No, they don't get awards for perfect attendance because
Maybe they're
just because
mixing
they
it up.
no, just because they're at the school doesn't mean they're at the school.
Yeah,
Oh.
right.
There are other things that go. Come on,
Yeah.
man.
I guess
Come
you're right.
on.
I mean,
Yeah.
I ain't got no
Let's
kids.
not.
I ain't got no kids.
So look, listen. That's why I do my show, Word with Ty Brownlow, to be a listening ear to those who have no one to listen to them. All right. Basically, those people who have gone through tragedy, they turn that tragedy into triumph. Man, they can be a bridge for someone else who's going through the same thing.
What is one of the most impactful stories that was on your show?
I just had a story on my podcast. I just started a podcast.
Ah, fancy.
Okay, so I have a talk show and a podcast to reach everyone outside of LA because everyone's like, well, man, I don't live in LA. I can't come be on your show. So I started a podcast for you all. I just had a young lady. I'll just shout her out. Erin Joy Carmack. She was just on my podcast. She's a domestic violence survivor. And her story was very compelling. And I asked her what was her endpoint, like at what point did she know that this was like, okay, like at what point did you realize that this was going on, and at what point did you realize, okay, this is the end, like I'm done. And just her story, how it got started, where it got started. And there's a lot of things that we in the black community do not talk about when it comes to things that we've been raised to do, as like go to church and things of that nature. There's a lot of things that we don't talk about, and she
And we
talks
use
about
that
that.
as a shield
And we use it.
for
Yeah.
all kind of
As other
tomfoolery
things.
and shenanigans that happen in those places we're supposed to be protected. Not just church, but any
Other places.
other places.
Mhm.
And they become hiding places for tomfoolery and shenanigans. And because we don't do well with being vocal because we're so afraid that we're not going to be heard, we're not going to be understood.
And I don't think it's that we're afraid. I want to use the word. I think we're more ashamed. I think that's why we don't speak up. It's not afraid. I think a lot of people are ashamed for you to know that part of me. You know that. You know.
Well,
I
it's
think
also part of our conditioning too,
Yeah.
because you have to understand, like church and things of that nature, that's been handed down from decades and eons
Yes.
and eons. So the one thing I always try to tell the youth when I'm talking to them, who told you to do that?
Right.
Right.
Well, my mom told me to go to church. Well, who told her to go to church? Well, her mom. Well, okay, so who told her?
Her grandma.
Like,
grandma. Big
why
mama,
do
yeah.
we do the things that we do?
So
that,
my husband and I were just having this conversation. We started watching that Malcolm X special on Netflix.
I have to watch that. I hear it's good. Great.
Yeah.
Dope.
Yeah.
But even with that, before we've always started to say it's time for us to start questioning some of these things that have been handed down.
And not
Malcolm
just-
X,
and
Martin
not
Luther
just
King,
Oh, yes.
church, politics, the way that we have been doing things as a people because somebody else told us to do it, because somebody else told them to do it. My thought is do your research before you make your decision. Even if your daddy told you to do it, even if your uncle, your mama told you to do it, do your research and see if what they're saying resonates. Doesn't necessarily mean don't do it,
No.
but at
Right.
least do your research and find out for yourself if it's a compelling reason to move forward in those steps. So
But
do you
critical
have
thinking is
not
it's
working?
well, it's not taught, and it's hard to teach someone critical thinking when they live in a household that aren't full of critical
Well,
thinkers.
critical
Yes.
thinking should be taught at an early age. So even
Whether
with,
it's in your home or not, if you don't have a household that agrees or believes that critical thinking is important, then where else are you going to get those critical thinking skills
Right.
from?
A lot of parents are not teaching their kids to be critical thinkers. A lot of parents are just doing things for their kids and that's the thing. So now these kids now you send them out into the world and they don't know how to think. They're not thinking and they're like you said, oh well my mama told me to do this or my daddy told me to do this or my uncle told me to do this. That's why we're doing it. They're not really thinking.
But
They're
it's
not
also
really
it's also traditionally
Yeah.
out of safety.
Right.
We had to think for our
That's
children because if we didn't, other people that had wrong intentions for them were going to get them swept up. So we said, okay, just do what I say because
Wait a
that
minute.
kept you
But we
out of
also,
being
but that leaves
killed.
us in a situation now where we're saying people outside of the house always have wrong intentions. We're not even addressing the fact that people in the house sometimes have wrong intentions.
okay, I'm going to say this. Let's break it down a little bit further then. How do people see you? How do your parents see you?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and see
If they
now.
see you.
Well, great.
Yeah, I was about to say that's
And-
not always a positive.
Well,
thing.
no. That's my point. Because sometimes people still see us in a certain light. We have made transformed to become this
Right.
totally other entity, but in their eyes, they just can't see past this point. My mom says this. My mom's from the South. All my people are from Mississippi. Mom, dad, all that. But my mom says it all the time. Sometimes the problem with the South is they take too long to change. It's hard to change the minds of
for sure.
people who've been conditioned to think a certain way.
Well, I think that's everywhere. I don't think it's just in the South. It's just we deal with that every day. It's hard to even my profession. We're so used to doing things one way, and this is what you get all the time. But this is how we always did it. Nobody wants change, and when you try to bring about change, they resist it because they're this whole thing. But this is how we've always done it,
Well,
and just because we've always done it that way,
Doesn't mean that there isn't a better way.
there's in a better way.
okay,
Well,
so
they are slower. They're still eating fried
Well-
bologna sandwiches with Velveeta cheese and getting excited
Oh,
about it.
yeah.
I told you about that.
That's
That's
upgrade.
that's a staple for them, you know.
Slower.
but
Go ahead.
okay, but you know what? I will say this as well.
Did you say bologna or just fried bologna?
Five below.
Okay, I'm gonna tell you the story really
Making me
quick.
hungry
We
now.
were on our way from my grandfather's house in Mississippi, on our way to New Orleans, and we passed by Hardee's. You know, Hardee's is our Carl's Jr. So we're passing by, and there was a long line of people and a big old sign talking about "It's back," like the McRib, right? Okay,
Which is
but
like the chicken
equally
sandwich
as
But it
at
wasn't
Popeyes.
the McRib. It was a fried bologna sandwich with Velveeta cheese. The
What?
biggest sign I have ever seen. I'm gonna find that sign. I'm gonna put it on my
They
page.
had a line in
They
Mississippi
had a line. They were so excited.
for the bologna
This was
sandwich.
not even 5 years ago. It said, "It's back." Okay?
See? And y'all thought that Popeye's
Fried
chicken
bologna.
was the only one.
With Velveeta cheese. It was advertised with Velveeta cheese, and they were super excited. So yes, the South just a little slower,
But we love y'all.
But we
Oh
love
no!
y'all.
Look, shout out to my sister in Memphis. Shout out to my people in South Haven. Shout out to
Exactly.
my people in Anguilla, Mississippi.
Yeah.
Rolling Fork, Mississippi. Greenwood, Greenville,
Hattiesburg,
Hattiesburg. Man, Itabena.
I'm a Yankee. I don't know anything about those.
Summerall.
Man, all my people, Natchez, my Aunt Cora, my people down on the coast, Gulfport,
Biloxi.
all y'all, love y'all.
Shout out to
y'all.
all my aunties and uncles in the South.
Love
Yeah.
y'all, love y'all.
Hi.
Yeah.
All my people in Texas,
Stay off the
Georgia.
Velveeta.
My people's in